What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you like this video. This is part 2 or episode 2 of Surviving R. Kelly. And so this episode gets a lot deeper, right? We start off with the young lady that we ended the last episode with, whom he met down in Florida at the mall. And we see that their relationship, she wanted to be a singer, but she said that, basically immediately he started kissing her and came on to her and made sexual advances. And she said in her mind, she knew that this wasn't going in the direction that she wanted to go in, but she didn't know how to say no. She felt like she had to. She didn't want to make him mad. She thought he could still help her with her career. And she was 17. So most 17-year-olds, I remember being in high school and different things like that. And I certainly it wasn't with celebrities, but I remember going through the same situation with guys you like. You don't want to make them mad, but you want to, you know what I mean? Something I found interesting in this episode, his brother, Bruce, his older brother, he's in jail. They're interviewing him from jail. And he's sort of defending R. Kelly. He's like, we all have preferences. Everybody has their preference. I prefer older women. He prefers younger women. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Nigga, what? And I'm like, the mentality for him to even defend this, I'm like, wow. Wow. In this episode, we meet his wife. She was 19 when she met R. Kelly. She was a dancer, and she auditioned to go on tour with him and be in the video for Sex Me. She got the audition, and they started dating and everything. And she said, in the beginning, everything was cool, right? And they had a psychologist there talking about that cycle of abuse. She said, that honeymoon phase, even to the point where she said, he broke himself all the way down, even to the point where he let her know he couldn't read or write really well and wanted her to help him. Right? So it's like, wow, this man is really letting me in. Oh my gosh, he's becoming vulnerable for me. He's exposing himself to me in such a way. And she said it was just beautiful. And his brother Bruce, the same guy I was talking about before, he was saying how, in the beginning everything was all hugs and smiles and everything was all great. And then once they started dating, it was just different. And a couple of things that are consistent with everybody that they've interviewed so far is that he's a control freak. That he is a control freak, and people that he's dating, they're not allowed to talk to anybody else. They're not allowed to look at anybody else. And that's the other thing his brother said. His brother was like, all the men in my family are like that. When we date a woman, we real jealous. He never used the word controlling, but he was like, we don't really want them dressing a certain way or being around certain people. That's how we are. That's just how we are. And again, justifying the behavior. And for you say all the men in our family are like that. So that, again, that says something about that, the background, the foundation. We also talked to Sparkle in this episode, and again, if you're in my age group, you know who Sparkle is. You know that story, that one of the women in the video that R. Kelly, young ladies in the video that got exposed, is Sparkle's niece. And so she tells her story, and she has a lot of guilt because she actually introduced her niece to R. Kelly, and we find out her niece was a rapper. So she introduced her niece to R. Kelly because she said, R. Kelly's doing all these things for my career. He can do it for her, and she has all this talent. And she said, she never knew until one day she showed up in the studio, and her niece was already in the studio, and she was like, what the hell are you doing here? And you just saw she was just really broken up over that. She blames herself for exposing her niece, and her niece was 13, maybe even 12. I wrote it down. 13. Her niece was 13. And R. Kelly was having sex with her niece. 13. There was another young lady that we were introduced to. She met him on a video shoot. Same thing. He invited her to come back to his trailer and immediately made sexual advances. And again, she was like, I was 17 years old. He was this big celebrity. At that point, I Believe I Can Fly was already out. Like, he was at the pinnacle. Well, you know, what 17-year-old is not going to be like starstruck and be like, oh my gosh, it's R. Kelly? And their relationship actually evolved to the point where she was with him for a number of years, and she started talking about threesomes and how he coerced her, forced her into these threesomes, and how he would keep her isolated. And when her mom would call the studio or call looking for her, the people in the studio went through him to say, basically, is she allowed to have this phone call? And she said there were times when her mother would call and they wouldn't let her mother through. His wife talked about how when they were dating and they were on tour, how he would change her cell phone number and she wouldn't even know about it, so that her family couldn't get through. And again, if you're familiar with the cycle of abuse, that's that cycle of abuse. You know, isolate them, make them feel like that they only can rely on you, that their family has abandoned them or they can't reach out to their family, and you keep them in that little hole. The young lady in Florida talked about the first time he hit her because he said she was looking at another man. So he hit her. And she said from that point forward, she was just walking on eggshells because she didn't want to piss him off again. She didn't want to get hit again. Again, cycle of abuse. He's a teenager. He's a teenager, you know. Sparkle talked about one time being at the house. They're watching the basketball game, and she hears this knock at the door from another part of the room, part of the house, and it's his wife asking if she can come out and get something to eat. They sit there chilling watching the damn basketball game, and his wife is asking permission, and his wife even said, there are things that happened to me while I was with R. Kelly that I'm not going to talk about because I can't go into that dark place again. Another thing that was consistent was all of the women said he made them call him daddy. See, everybody ain't lying when everybody's story is the same. You understand what I'm saying? Everybody can't be lying on R. Kelly when everybody's story is the same. And so this was hard to watch. The first episode it was like, okay, yeah, I kind of know all of this. But this episode was really, really hard to watch. And again, everybody can't be lying. And again, I say, where does this go? I mean, does this finally mute R. Kelly? You know, because this is just, and I think this is a 6-part series, and we only in part 2, and I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. So we will see. I think it's a 6. I know this isn't the end because of the way it ended. It can't be the end of the series, but again, I don't have any more words, y'all. Y'all let me know what y'all think in them comments. Go watch it if you haven't watched it. But the part 2 was really hard. Part 2 was really hard to get through for me. But y'all let me know what y'all think. Peace.